top of the hour, 10 a.m. Eastern. Welcome to Oracle Apex Office Hours. This is part 4 of our 4-part series in talking about what's new in Oracle Apex 23.1, which is coming out really soon in general availability. However, you can take a look at apex.oracle.com right now and look at our pre-release of Apex 23.1. So I'm Jason Haynes, I'm your host. We have a few special guests today to talk about features they developed for the product, and I have a few announcements before we get started and I hand it over. This is Oracle Apex Office Hours, and like I said, this is a 4-part series. We've done the first part was April 20th, and that recording is available today. Part 2 is going to be available very soon. Part 3 is coming also very soon, and today we're going to meet with Karsten and Peter to talk about their features in Apex 23.1. So we have all kinds of events coming up. On May 18th, there's another Office Hours for JPAC featuring solving integration challenges. You can see the URL right there. Also on May 18th, we have Apex Office Hours in Portuguese. And I'm not going to try to explain what this is, but I'm sure it's going to be very exciting. May 25th, we have Apex in Spanish, something about plugins. I'm sure it's going to be great. And then June 12th coming up, Apex in Romanian, where there's going to be other discussions regarding forms and other aspects of Apex that apply to just doing great things in Apex, but specifically in those different languages. And that's why we're really excited to make these announcements and make everybody on the call aware that we do offer office hours globally in all these different languages. Upcoming conferences still. Next month is kind of big. We have Ascend 23 in Orlando, Florida. I will be attending that one. And on June 25th, 20 through 29th, we have a co-event with Kscope 23 and the first ever Apex Bootcamp, where people are going to be able to attend in person to the Apex Bootcamp on the Sunday and Monday and learn from the team that builds Apex, including myself and many other people that are on the call. Many other team members that have been involved in everything that you've grown to love about Apex are going to be there to teach the Apex Bootcamp. But in addition to that, the Kscope 23 general sessions throughout the week are going to feature many people from around the world talking about Apex, including some of the Apex team that are going to be doing other sessions, and we'll also have some hands-on labs on that Thursday. So if you're anywhere near Colorado, USA, consider joining us for Bootcamp at the Kscope 23 event. If not, combine and go ahead and do both. You can do the Apex Bootcamp and the regular Kscope 23 sessions throughout the week. It's going to be a busy week and it's going to be a lot of fun. So today, part 4, what's new in Oracle Apex 23.1. There are plugin updates. There's going to be some review of the Invoke API for REST data sources and some discussion about background page processing. So to start us off, we're going to have Peter Ragnich. He's going to talk about plugins updates. And Peter, after we finished hearing what you have to say, I'll come back and share back to introduce Karsten after you're done. In any case, though, welcome, Peter. It's great to have you, and we can't wait to learn more about these plugin updates. So with that, I'll stop sharing and hand it over to you. And I'll try to hold down the fort with the Q&A with the rest of the team. We have a big team ready to answer your questions today. So please use the Q&A feature, and we'll jump on those questions. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, thanks a lot for welcoming me, and I'm kind of excited, and it's a bit scary to be on my first Apex Office Hours, so feeling very honored and humble. So there's only a few tiny things I want to talk about or can talk about right now, and it's mostly about plugins. And as you guys know, we did the fair share amount of plugins in the past, so I'm totally happy to be involved in some plugin enhancements right now, and there is more coming along. But for today, and this might seem trivial for some, but I hope it makes a huge difference for many out there. We are talking about number of plugin attributes and how to present them nicer. So you might have seen that just some arbitrary plugin, and I picked one from the community, right? You have a list of settings, right? And then this list might go long, and so far item plugins had 15 possible attributes, and that wasn't just enough, because nowadays we want to build really sophisticated and fancy plugins, so we increased this number to 25 as we did with region plugins before that. But take me off record, this is a spoiler, we might be looking at increasing this number in the future to more, maybe even unlimited. But anyway, looking at a typical plugin, you see something like that at plugin definition. And I'm totally aware that not everyone is building plugins. So I'm really trying to go fast here and then focus on what's here for every developer using plugins. You can define a lot of attributes for plugins. So that's, I don't know, that's not even 15, and it can be 25 nowadays. So that's a hugely number, and of course you want to style this somehow, you want to group them. So what we did now with Apex 23.1 was the introducing attribute plugin groups. So for plugin developers, you can define just any number of groups, and it doesn't matter what name those groups have. That's really just a way of titling the section. And then you use your plugins here and you put them into a group. So let's pick this one, custom SVG path. So you have the label and you can just pick one of the previously defined groups. As long as there is no group defined, it's always settings, right? So that's today's behavior. Everything is in settings, but now you can create new groups and can add them to those groups. So when we go back to our page and we take a look at the old version of the plugin, we can see everything is in settings, right? And you might not see all the attributes at once. There might be some dependencies, but looking at the updated version, you can see there is some attributes being in the group settings. Some are in a new group called styling or timing or even arbitrary, or it doesn't really matter, right? You can define all the groups you want to have. And I think that's really helpful in terms of using plugins, because now you might be a crazy good plugin developer. You can create all these huge plugins with many attributes, but for some of your users, other developers using those plugins, it might not be so obvious to walk through a long list of plugins, and now you have those groups there. So, and this is also being used for all types of plugins. So it doesn't really matter if it's item plugins or region plugins or anything else. It could be any type of plugin. So when I create, let's say, a new region here, and I previously created a plugin just to max out all the attributes, and there you see the difference. Region attributes are not shown directly, they are hidden in the attributes tab. You can now see there's a group A and P and E and X, and there's all those attributes. So even a large number like 25 attributes can be nicely scoped together. And you know, the winner of today's quiz is who knows which word is hidden behind those group names. So those plugin attributes are simply meant to help us to present plugins nicer, and looking in the future, we are trying to implement so many more features to plugins, and this is just the first step to make it possible to use it in a simpler, easier to understand way. All right, some other tiny thing before I hand it over to Carsten. What I was allowed to work on is context-sensitive help. So you probably know there is sometimes in Application Builder, we have in the sidebar links like Learn More, or there is this top-level navigation bar menu with the documentation link. To be honest, they weren't like too helpful in the past, but now we worked together with the documentation team and we came up with a mechanism to make it easy for both groups to allow creating better links and better jump points, so to say. So that's context sensitive help. So the idea is basically whenever you click on a documentation link, you should land where it makes most sense, or at least really close by. Just the right chapter in the existing Apex application development books, like where the listing of apps is explained, or listing of pages, and that goes as deep as you want. So even if you go somewhere like application items and you create an item and you click on a help link there, there's view documentation. This will take you to as close as possible today where you should go, and we will work on more to improve that even more. So I guess that's it for now. 23.1, 25 item attributes and attribute groups. That's the big thing here.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Peter. And just to be clear, I guess for everyone that's paying attention to that help context that Peter demoed, is when Apex 23.1 goes general availability, the documentation comes out ahead of time. So right now at apex.oracle.com, this doesn't work because the 23.1 documentation is not currently available. But when it does become available, all this functionality will work much better for the developer. So very cool. Thank you, Peter. Again, Peter was just talking about plugin updates, the whole 25 attribute opportunity of having more features or more parameters passed in to your plugins. It's a huge deal if you build your own Apex plugins. If you've never built an Apex plugin, there are some good hands-on labs around doing this. There are some good tutorials out there that many other third parties have put together. I learned from some of the best out there doing some of this plugin stuff, but you got to learn some PL SQL, some JavaScript to bring it all together from the low level. So it's definitely not something that's declarative on its own. The whole point of plugins is to make something that is declarative and is easy for new Apex developers to take advantage of. But in any case, we're up next with Karsten, and he's going to talk about invoking API for REST data sources and also about the new background page processing features. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Karsten to share your screen. And let's see what you have to offer. This is exciting. I mean, I keep saying this every time we do office hours and I'm hosting, but it really is a great time to be an Apex developer because never in history before has it been so easy to build so many complex functional apps with so little code. Beyond the no code aspect, just the low code functionality here is just huge. So I do appreciate all the effort that the Apex team from the developer perspective and the community in offering ideas that we've been putting into new releases of Apex have made, because it just keeps making the product better and better, and it makes our jobs as Apex developers even more fun, if not easier. So having said that, on to you, Karsten.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason. Great to just feels great to talk to you guys again twice a year with the office hours. I hope everybody can hear my voice fine and can see my screen okay. And as Jason was saying, I'm going to show you two new features today. One is the invoke API for REST, and I will start with that feature. And that is not a brand new feature, it's more the continuation of a feature which was introduced in 22.2 already, right? So, and people who attended office hours half a year ago might remember Patrick presenting the new invoke API process type. And before jumping into the new feature, let's quickly recap what the invoke API process type was, just to get us all on the same page again. So I won't explain this in great detail, just briefly. We have a new process type introduced again back in 22.2, which is the invoke API. And the goal of the invoke API was, or is still, to make invocation of PL SQL procedures and functions more easy. We all know how this works, but still, to invoke some PL SQL, traditionally, we have to do the execute code, type begin, and then there you go, invoking your package, and then end, and hopefully your syntax is right. And the invoke API makes that easier because I can just pick my package, pick my procedure. I might even show that we have pop-up windows to pick from these values so I can see what's inside my package, right? So for instance, like that. And then we have all the parameters of that procedure, and we can map that parameter to a page item, to an expression, to a SQL query, and so on, right? That was introduced to 22.2. And with 22.2, it supports all things SQL and PL SQL. PL SQL packages, PL SQL functions, PL SQL standalone procedures, right? So far, so good. So, but one thing was missing right from the beginning, and that was clearly planned as a second phase, and that was to do the same for REST APIs, right? Because when we look at REST services and Apex, we have very thorough support for REST and REST services. In Apex, you know, there is REST data sources, which allow us to create reports or forms on top of a REST API. But when it's about a REST API, which is to be called as a process, right? So let's say you don't have the typical form case of inserting, updating, or deleting a row. You have some sort of business logic, if you will, which is implemented as a REST API. And your typical idea in Apex would be to call this as a page process. And that is what the new feature is about. And to demo this, let's start with a bit of a REST API, which allows us to promote an employee. And as in a good cooking show, I prepared a little bit, right? So we have a REST API here, which is that URL endpoint. It's a post method, and it's there to promote an employee, right? And here is some really hacky business logic, which I put down in a few minutes, right? It's really just changing the job from one to another, right? The idea is we call that REST API with a URL, and there is even one parameter, and that's the employee number. So we want to create an Apex report, a form, and also as part of that form, we want to allow promotions, and the promotion should happen by calling this very REST API, right? So let's have a look. I prepared an empty application here. And the first thing we need is we need a REST data source. Right now, I don't have anything. I won't create them all from scratch, right? We can do this for 5 years now, and I'm pretty sure lots of people know how to create a REST data source. So let me take a shortcut here and create my REST data sources from the catalog. So I created or I prepared the REST source catalog. So let me add in the normal and CRUD REST API and then my promotions REST data source. So there we are. Here are our REST data sources. Let's have a look into our promotions REST API. And there is a post endpoint, and that post endpoint does the promotion. And this, if you paid attention to the URL endpoint in the screen before, and you can still remember, you will see it's pretty much the same, right? So this is the REST data source, which accesses the REST API to promote an employee. And in the REST data source, we have our parameters, right? We have the message, which is an out parameter, which tells us about whether the promotion was successful. And we have the status code, which is the technical success or failure message. What else do we have? We have another parameter at the module level, and that is the employee number. So this is the metadata for our REST data source. Of course, if you are working with different REST APIs, your REST data sources will look different. Of course they will. So, and then there is still the other REST data source, which allows you to build a report. So let's get started with our page. I will start with an interactive report. I want to add a form, and I want to do this on the REST data source. And for report and form, I would use the CRUD REST data source, which gives me the usual insert, update, delete, and list employee stuff. All right, I didn't show that in great detail because that's something which is available since Apex 18, right? So nothing new here. So we now have a form page, a report page, plus a form page on our employees REST data source. There we are, right? Oh, you've seen I've played a bit with this before. Let me bring that back to start again. So this is the well-known M table with our 14 rows with jobs, salaries, and so on. Okay, here is the form page, which allows me to edit the data, and I want to have a new button to promote the employee, let's say left to the apply changes. Okay, let's do that right now. Here's our form page. We can see the page items. We can see the form region, which is on top of the CRUD REST data source. We see the automatic form processing process, which also works on the REST data source, which allows me to do these typical insert, update, deletes. So now let's get to the promotion. No, not a page item, not so fast. Create a button, and this should be the promote button, all right? Of course, the promotion is always hot. And yeah, this is the button. Yeah, I think I don't need to show you the button. We can go on to implementing the promotion right now. So let me create a new process. And that is promote the employee. And we will use the invoke API process type. And no, we won't work with PL/SQL. We will work with the REST data source. And we will use the promotions REST data source and promote the employee operation. Right. So I now pick my operation to work with. And here, and that is the equivalent to picking a PL/SQL procedure from a package. Same thing. And after I pick my operation, I see the parameters. The employee parameter is a mandatory thing, of course, otherwise it can't work. Let's map that to an item. And let's do the others a bit later. So then, of course, what we want to have a bit of a promotion succeeded. Promotion did not succeed, right? And then, of course, only if we click the promote button. Okay, let's run this. Oh, it's a modal page. Of course it is. So let me go back to page 2, run that page, and let's go to work again. We have our new promotion button here. Let me click that, and we can see what was promoted from salesman to account executive, and our promotion succeeded. Right? We can promote again, and now he became VP. Wow, fantastic. Or she might become VP. We don't know whether what is a she or a he. So, and if we want to promote her further, it says promotion did not succeed. That's what we configured in that process. Okay, let's go back to the page. Maybe we can do a bit more. And our REST API provided a few more parameters. We have a message parameter, which is out. And initially, we ignored these out parameters. So let's now stop ignoring them. And we want to have that parameter. I would like to know what's inside that message. And let's add a new hidden item for that. Let's now pull the out parameter into our new hidden item. And let's display this somewhere. Let's use that as the success message. And actually, I'm unsure, but let's also try using it as the error message. Let's see what we get. So now I'm in full screen mode, so I have to navigate first to page 2 and then to page 3 again. So let's go with Alan. Let's promote her to account executive. That's something not right. 1 second. I know what it is. That's P3 message, of course, and not just message. So let's fix that. Again, promote. And there we are. This is our message, right? This comes from the REST API that tells us that we promoted Alan to VP. Okay, let's promote again. And also the error message comes from the REST API. The career goal has reached, we can't promote further. So how did Apex detect that the first one was successful, but this one was an error? And that's easy, right? Apex relies on the HTTP status codes here. So the REST API, when the promotion is successful, it returns status 200, okay. And then the process, the invoke API process knows, oh, this was successful. If the return code is 400 or 500 something, then the invoke API process knows, oh, no, this went wrong, right? So this is pretty much what the invoke API process is about. You can see we have, as for the PL/SQL part, we now have a very simple and declarative way of configuring the process and mapping the parameters. I would love to show you one more example, though. to have a comparison or to give you a comparison between that new invoke API process and the manual PL/SQL equivalent. Because calling a REST data source from a page process, that was possible before. You could do it. You can do it with Apex 18 even. However, it's not as easy, right? So let me show you one of the test applications which I once built during development. And here is my an example which does pretty much the same. You know the M table, so the idea is give me one employee number, and I would like to get those three attributes, the name, the salary, and the hire date from the REST API. And we are doing that with an invoke API, right? So this is pretty much the equivalent of a select into, right? If that was a plain table, you would code select ename, salary, hire date into item, item, item from M where, right? And here we have the same thing with invoke API. And we also have the same thing with Apex exec. That's not too much of a difference. And looking at the result, even more, right? But let's have a look into what this means implementation-wise. So, and we have two processes here which both do the same thing. One is the invoke API process. And here I'm using the CRUD REST data source and the get attributes operation. And here we have our in parameter, our out parameter for the ename, the hire date, and the salary. And you can see, pretty easy, right? We just map stuff. That's it. Yeah. So what would be the PL/SQL equivalent? I was saying this is doable with PL/SQL as well. The Apex exec package allows you to call any REST data source. But as I was saying, it's not as easy. This is the PL/SQL equivalent, right? Which does the same thing, declare parameters, call the REST API, get values back. So you can see it's a bit more effort to do this with plain PL/SQL. So from that point of view, we do believe that the invoke API process type is now really complete. So the REST part was actually missing, as we really see REST as a first-class data source in Apex, not below or above PL/SQL. It's next to PL/SQL. They are on the same level. Working with tables and PL/SQL should be as easy and straightforward as working with REST. And that's what we want to achieve with the new invoke API process. I believe I hope we can live to that goal, right? So try it out and let us know how you like, or hopefully not dislike, that feature. I'm very curious to hear about your experiences. Okay, so far about the invoke API process type. We now have to switch our minds, make it easier. I will slow down a bit now. 2 or 3 seconds, clear the mind, right? Because we need to context switch now. Forget REST. We're not talking REST anymore. We are now talking about page processes. And this is another new feature in Apex for which we hope that things become much more easy for you now, right? And the situation we found, not only ourselves, we found with internal customers and talking to you guys at conferences or on Twitter or on the Apex Word chat, pretty often we noticed we all implementing our business logic on our Apex pages into a page process. Sure, what else should we do? Sometimes the business logic is quick. That's fine. But sometimes business logic you are invoking it's a bit more to do, right? Lots of work to do. And there are typical examples even, right? So data loading is the textbook example for a page process. So if we are loading data, we have a page process which loads all that stuff into our table. However, loading data can mean, oh, I'm loading 200 rows. That's quick. That can also mean I'm loading 2 million rows. Not so quick, right? And we are in the web world here. So our end users are using the browser and the internet to work with their applications. And in the web world, checking off a page, submitting a page, and then waiting for 10 minutes until everything is completed, that doesn't really fly. We are seeing it all the time, but at the end of the day, it's not what we want. And very often we get that the symptom for these things is very often, oh, I'm seeing a web server timeout message. What can we do? And why are we seeing a timeout message? Because the process took too long. Why took the process so long? Sometimes it's just a tuning exercise, but sometimes we just have to execute a lot of work, and the work takes its time. So we need to find a way to have Apex doing all that work, but getting control, but returning the browser to the end user immediately. And also there is a solution for that, of course. We can do it in the database. We can do it with Apex. And the answer is use the scheduler. The answer used to be use the scheduler. So you can draft a PL/SQL page process. That page process kicks off a DBMS scheduler job in the background, and the browser comes back immediately. The scheduler job does its job, and we are all happy. Are we? It was just so easy, right? Because kicking off a scheduler job isn't that easy. You are now, oh, where's my Apex session? Oh, that scheduler job. How do I have to create a job with a scheduler at all? DBMS scheduler dot, what was that? So we need to look up the documentation. We figure that code out somehow. Then the job kicks off. Oh, where are my page items? Where is my input? The job runs in a different context. It doesn't have all this. So it's at the end, it's not so easy, right? And we wanted to make that as an easy declarative experience for you guys. And that means we are talking about declarative background processing, right? And let me first, before I show you that page, let me quickly create a new page and walk you through the basic building blocks. Oh, you know what? Let me use that application a bit later, and let's work with that one. Quickly create a new page. In Apex, we are fast, right? So, and let me very quickly simulate the situation of a long-running process, right? Something, then we have a page item that is amount of work, and then we have a button to submit our amount of work. So then we have our page process, and our work is just to see for the seconds I have configured as the amount of work. So there we are, right? We want to execute it. All the work is done now. So, and then of course, only when we click our button, and let's try our new page out. So 5 seconds, oh, lots of work to do. And we can see the typical situation. It takes its time, right? And after 5 seconds, our process came back. So how can we send that into the background, right? Without having to manually code the scheduler. And that is by using a new process type we introduced in Apex 23.1, which is our execution chain, right? So we took it a bit further, right? And we did not just add a background switch somewhere here, because just sending one process to the background might not be enough, right? Because yeah, you might want to execute a lot of work in the background, but after that work is done, you might send off an email, but you don't want to send off the email and do all your work in parallel. You want to send to the background, but in the background, one after the other. So there must be a way to configure all this, right? So, and we came up with the execution chain concept, right? So an execution chain is, if you will, a group of page processes. And we can now group all the work stuff. And then let's say at another child process, let me send out some email to myself, and the subject is all the work is done. And the body text is finally, right? So now we are doing all the work, and we're sending out the email. but it's now grouped together with this execution chain thing. And the execution chain can run in the background, right? That's basically it. That's our switch to send that stuff off to the background. And of course, there's a bit of configuration assigned to that, right? So for instance, many people are using your application and now sending off stuff to the background. Do you want to have them work in parallel? Or is that something, oh, we are working on one given table and maybe a given row in the table. So even if multiple end users are using that, they can run it in the background, but all these background processes must be executed one after the other. And that is your requirement, flip the switch, right? You want to monitor your background execution. You want to have a progress bar or something. We don't have the progress bar as a native component. But what we can do for you is you can get an execution ID back, and that execution ID allows you to track the status of the background execution using some apex views, right? And you can prevent impatient end users to kick off one execution after the other, right? So if somebody has a nervous mouse finger, you can say after 3 times it's in the thread, right? The temporary file handling, I will talk about that a bit later. Okay, so let's now, of course, we want to execute, so background execute, so submitted, success message. All that stuff should be kicked off only if the button is pressed. Then if the whole chain is now dependent on the button, we don't need that one anymore. And that is it. All right, let me send the mail. So let's try this out, right? And I'm now giving 300 seconds even, right? And there we are. The browser comes back immediately, and the background is the execution is running in the background. And I don't need to show you this one. I have something pre-canned to illustrate that a bit better. But you now have seen the building blocks, right? We have the new groups, execution chains. Your actual page processes become children of the execution chain, and the execution chain runs either in the foreground as before, or in the background, right? So let's have a look into this application, which allows me to show a bit more. There we are. And this is pretty much the same, right? So I have a loop here. Let me execute that 10 times. And this page does a bit more than the one I had together before. So we have a normal page process here, which writes a bit of debug info. We have the execution chain. And we have a bit of logic here, and this is interesting. So we are executing a loop. We sleep 5 seconds with each iteration. And then we use a new package in Apex that's also new in 23.1, Apex background process. And we use that to report the progress, right? So the total work is the number of iterations I had to work on, and this so far is what we already did. And database savvy people might memorize the $v session long logs, which this is modeled after a bit. Okay, so let's try that out. 15 loop iterations. Let me kick it off. And then what I have is a bit of refreshing report, which allows me to monitor this a bit, right? And you can now see how the so far value increases over time, right? And this is a classic report, which is created. This is nothing fancy, right? It's a plain classic report. And when we look at that classic report, it utilizes a dictionary view, an Oracle dictionary, an Apex dictionary view, and it reports the process name, a few other columns, and here are the so far and total work columns, which show me how far the execution got, right? And so it continues, and the status message column that will contain the success or error message the last success or error message, which was logged by one of the child processes in that execution chain. So the status right now is executing, and we should be done in just a few seconds. And then we should see how this changes from executing to successful. And there we are. And we see the status message background process executed. And of course, there are other other status types when things go south. You have an error or something. But you might now say, oh, so bad. I just have coded in an infinite loop. How can I stop this? Don't you worry. You don't need to call up the DBA to kill a scheduler job for you. We extended the developer toolbar a bit, and we now have the background executions here, and here we can see that the zoom controls are always in the way. So we can see here are the background processes, and what we can see is that there is an action button, and I can simply hit abort now. And now Apex allows me to get rid of that process which I accidentally kicked off. And here we can see this is now aborted, right? There are similar screens in workspace administration, and there is also another similar screen in internal administration, which gives administrators a hook into what's going on. There is also the Apex background process package also allows you to programmatically abort the process, right? So you have full control over these background executions. Talking about full control, what happens if my end users now go crazy and kick up hundreds of background executions? As I was saying, the first line of defense is in the execution chain itself. So you can set a limit here, right? This applies to the session and to the current Apex session, and that prevents one user from going crazy and kicking off too much stuff. But you can do more, right? So if resources are limited on your instance, the next line of defense is the Apex application attribute. So we have a new attribute called maximum background page process jobs, which is 2 in my case here. So that means for this application, only 2 background jobs can run at the same time. If a third is submitted, this will wait, right? So in this view here, I can show you that. Let me kick up stuff, right? And you can see 2 of them are executing, and the other 2 are waiting, right? And they will have to wait until a slot becomes available. So this is per application, and the next line of defense is at the workspace level. So the Apex instance administrator can configure a maximum level of parallel background executions per workspace. And of course, that value can't exceed the workspace value. So if the workspace has configured 10, for instance, I might enter 200 here. You see, Apex doesn't complain, but make no mistake, you will get 10 and no more than 10. On heavily used instances like apex.oracle.com, we had to take it a bit conservative, right? So don't be surprised if you try that out on apex.oracle.com and you will see only one process running at a time. That is how we configure the instance. Every workspace has one background execution at the same time. As soon as the software becomes GA and you can download yourself, install on your own servers or in your autonomous services, there you have full freedom. You can configure what you want. But on the evaluation instance, we deliberately limited stuff, right? Okay, let me now finally, before wrapping stuff up, show you how this would look like for a data loading experience, right? And here I have a classic data loading page. So we now have done all these lab exercises. We now want to do something real. So let me first try to upload a file. right? And this is a standard data loading page built with the wizards, nothing fancy. So, and now let me load the data. And as we can see, this is traditional, right? So all synced in the foreground. It takes a while to upload all these 10,000 rows, few seconds, I think it was 20 seconds or so. And if the end user becomes impatient, well, and it's not really a web experience, right? So the goal is then, let's use our new capabilities, right? So load in background. We just use an execution chain, right? And the load data and send email processes become children of that new execution chain, right? We want to execute the background loading only when the load button is clicked. Success message is load data job submitted. And finally, yes, please execute in the background. And there was one more thing, because we are now dealing with files, right? And we need to make the background, it's technically a scheduler job, which runs in a different context. So normally the background job doesn't have access to the uploaded file, right? We don't move stuff around without asking. So if your background logic has to deal with files, uploaded files, we need to work with this temporary file handling attribute here. And in my case, I only need the file in the background. I don't need it in the foreground. So I'm moving it. And I'm moving this file to the background. But move means move, right? It's not available in the foreground anymore, right? If I need it in both places, the background process needs to work with the file, but some other foreground stuff needs the file as well. Then you would use copy to make it available, right? So if you don't need to work with the file in the background at all, or you don't have files involved at all, temporary files, by the way, then you can keep it as ignored. That's the default. Very often, sometimes you will need to use move, and sometimes, in the rare cases, you might want to use copy, right? So, and that should be it, right? So we have the success message, we have the button condition. Let me run the page again, and let me have a look into the table first. That is that's the table contents. It's my large file tab. So let me use SQL. So it's 10,000 rows in here. So let me clear stuff again. Verify, table is empty now. And now let's do the exercise again. Oh, and I have a table contents here. Let's select count star. You know what? Let me enable that. I think. So we even have a bit of a preview here. So here are the rows in our table, right? The preview is here. So let's go ahead. Let me load the data. So, and you can see the data loading job was submitted immediately. So the browser comes back, and I even added a bit of a progress indicator here. It's rather cheap, to be honest. It really, with JavaScript, I'm refreshing that report every whatever seconds, and you can also see the background status. So it's executing currently. So based with this information, it's actually very simple for you to send stuff into the background and to add some UI to your application to report on these things. So it executed with failure, and I know why it executed with failure. That is because I didn't provide an email address, right? So that was failing because we can see the job worked. So let's do it again. Have to get this running successfully. I just have to. And then afterwards, I need to send out an email. So another one, I could have worked with a validation here. Yes, of course. And next time I will do. So now we should see successful execution in a few seconds. Right. And again, so this report is built on a standard dictionary view, and you can use that to build whatever UI you're interested in. And now it was executed successfully, and even my email should now show that we have successful finished data loading process, and that was the one which was failing before. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have. And with that, I'm handing back the session to Jason.
All right, Carsten, thank you for so much information in that presentation. I don't even know where to begin, but I can't wait to play with it and start using it in my app specifically. So I can only imagine how excited everybody on the call must be. In any case, this has been Carsten talking about invoke APIs for REST. Let me just go ahead and share my screen again. I have a couple things I want to review. If you don't mind sticking around, don't quite jump yet. So Carsten was talking about invoke API for REST data sources and background page processing, but a few questions have come up and I wanted to point out a couple things. So over to my browser for a change in sharing. Everyone can see my screen, I hope. This is the Apex office hours in Espanol. And Monica pointed out that they will be talking about plugins by Leonardo Rodriguez on the Apex team. So he's going to actually talk about in Spanish how to build plugins, and that's going to be quite useful. There was a question asking about us doing this as a general session. We will consider it. But in any case, there's a lot of other things I want to point out. For all the new features on Apex 23.1, you can go to our website right now and look at the new features page, and you're going to see all the things we've talked about in this series, this 4-part series, and including some of the features that Peter and Carsten talked about today. From there, I want you to be aware that on our YouTube channel, we have uploaded and published some videos that review some of these features in succinct, very short videos. So take a look at some of those. Vincent just posted his PWA push notifications video, but you can see there are a few others that are available for everyone to review at your leisure. Moving on from there, let me just look in the chat. So many questions. We've done a lot of good question and answers today. Thank you everyone for your participation. But I wanted to also point out in the Apex page designer, this question has come up quite a bit. And I just want to point out that it's not obvious, but although the 3-pane view of page designer is the default, you're not stuck to looking at it like this. So there are vertical bars that you can actually click and drag to change the size. I think most people know about this. There are also buttons in the middle so you can collapse, right? But in addition to that, you can go to the wrench in the upper right and choose a layout that is 2-pane mode. And that's what Carsten was demonstrating throughout his particular content. So when you do the 2-pane mode, it literally removes that other little pane and you can rearrange things. But more than just that, if you didn't know that, you can reset your view. If I reset my layout, but you can literally change the overall arrangement of these tabs within these panes. So if I have help, for example, here in the middle, I can click and drag this over into this other pane. And I don't know if you knew that or not, but it's quite a useful feature, and you might have your own specific way of working with your Apex pages in Page Designer. But it's just good to know that even if you mess this up, you can reset it. But of course, you can rearrange the furniture in any way you wish. From there, I wanted to point out that the Kscope website has the ability for you to sign up today and register to attend, but the boot camp looks just like this, and this gives you a little bit of an idea of who's going to be at the boot camp, including myself and Vincent, Mark, Vlad, Tim, Shakib, and Scott Spendolini. We're going to be there in person, and we're just very excited for the opportunity to meet you and hear about your Apex successes, and obviously answer some of your questions, and also have you participate with some of the hands-on labs and some of the sessions that we're doing, in addition to all the other community members that will be present doing their own sessions. It looks like we have all our questions answered that make sense for this particular content. I once again appreciate having everybody visit live and participate with the Q&A. From there, we're looking very forward for the release of Apex 23.1. We don't release official dates, but it's coming very soon. So in the meantime, you can go to apex.oracle.com and take a look what Apex has available right now with all the new features that you can interact with on your own workspace. Beyond that, Thank you again for everyone. It's great to see you and can't wait to see you next time. From there, welcome, or thank you for Peter and Karsten, and we welcome you to the next office hours coming up in the next couple of weeks. Remember, we do this, every month or so. So keep a lookout on Ask Tom and Apex Office Hours, and keep coming back and be part of the conversation. We love having you, and we love doing this with you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all our Q&A assistants, and thank you for our special members that presented their content today, Karsten and Peter. Everyone have a great time. Bye-bye.